Welcome to the Freelance Drive. Here we talk with skilled freelancers about their professional journey. Stay tuned for real life experiences to learn and actionable steps to take to improve your freelancing career. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works. And my guest is Bertrand Rothen, a freelance product lead, certified Scrum product owner, and consultant who studied audio engineering out of school and explored a bunch of territories with drum and metal things, and who can go on talking about drumming forever. So, welcome, Bertrand.
Yuri, thanks for having me.
I'm super. I just remember our previous conversation when you told about your drumming experience and how you get into it. But it's not about it today. It's about networking. So, what does the word networking mean to you?
Well, everything's about drumming technically, but I'm just kidding. So in essence, I have to admit that I feel like neither am I the most motivated person when it comes to networking, nor am I the best person at networking. It's more, I guess, something that I developed as a necessity. But within that development, I definitely tapped into, you have to find your sweet spot for it. You have to find a way that you can make it fun for yourself. As with a lot of other things in life, where I don't know, things like having healthy habits, exercising, eating well, sleeping enough, all those kinds of things, they can be made to sound like a drag or something that's not fun, something you wouldn't want to do. But the key to actually executing on those things well is to make them fun for you, or finding pleasure in them. And in the same way, to me, networking developed into this thing where I grew up an extremely shy kid. But obviously I have a sort of an extrovert-ish personality trait, although the mix is kind of 55-45. So it's definitely not full-on extrovert. So I was definitely noticing that with some people and in certain situations, I had no problems connecting with people and breaking the ice really easily. And in other situations, I would feel very inhibited. And to learn from that spot, if you kind of go back to your early days, your teenage years, of course, those are the most complicated ones. But if you can really tap into what makes you feel at ease to approach someone, to talk to them, and what acts more as an inhibitor will kind of, give you guidance. I guess it also depends on the environment you're in, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something I do kind of have to go back to drumming a little bit, because I didn't grow up in an environment that was very similar to the music industry. So I really had to kind of put myself in a bit of a different spot to connect with people there. Also because they were so different from me. And came from such different backgrounds. At the same time, I do have an advantage of being sort of a third culture kid. So I was able to adapt to things rather easily, as opposed to being this kind of monocultural person who has to really kind of step out. So to me, networking really kind of means, as you said, just, making connections, also not just the amount of connections, but also the quality of connections. And if you coin the term as in taking stock of the overall quality of your network, and basically how many what's the closeness of your contacts, what do they mean to you, also of course in different regards, as in work related, hobby related, friendship related, or love related, or family related. And I wouldn't say it's a numbers game at all, but it's definitely something where even if you go back to the beginning of civilization, people relied on each other.
Yeah.
The ability to survive certain circumstances was predicated on the connections you had. So even for anyone who thinks like, I'd hate people, I don't like to talk to anyone, I feel like everyone's has a varying degree of fondness of people, but you cannot go it alone. If you go it alone, you're putting yourself at great risk for a lot of things. I don't, want to go into that too much, but it's definitely, especially if we're talking about professional context, it is not just about how many LinkedIn contacts you have. but about how many people would, as an example, easily contract you, hire you, would love to work with you, that you know of. That I feel like is definitely, that's a far smaller number, of course, but it's a much more impactful one than the people who know you exist.
You told that it developed with necessity. So did you ever have this thought that, okay, I have to do networking? Or maybe it came more like usually, like more kind of more, God damn it, I'm losing this word.
Do you mean like organically, as in like
Yes,
kind of crept up
yes,
on me? I feel like
yes.
it's a mix of both. I did notice that at the beginning when I started freelancing, that I didn't have the amount of traction which I wanted to have, especially relating to that. I would say the freelance bubble, so to say, is something different than the employed bubble, because I mean, I guess most people who listen to this podcast know that usually the people who hire employees and the people who contract freelancers are actually two different sets of people. The decision makers are sometimes similar, but the process runs through two different departments. So definitely, when I felt like I had a good amount of a network in the employed kind of sphere, and that I've had to catch up on the freelance side of things, I did notice that consciously, but at the same time, I also felt it. I felt I was I was too alone in that sense.
Mm, yeah. I totally get what you're talking about. And having this loneliness and overcoming it. So what is your approach to meeting new people?
So I like to cite, I forgot his name, the author who wrote the Freelance Manifesto. Like, he gave a little bit of a very kind of detailed approach to, reaching out, doing outreach, doing acquisition and stuff like that. And basically, he said that he would try to find a common shared interest, such as, for instance, music, or playing a musical instrument, or being a fan of a certain sports club, or being interested in that type of sport or something. Like, if you're I mean, there's of course these very extremely niche things where people bond like very fondly over, such as veganism and CrossFit, and the vegan CrossFit bubble. Like, if you're a vegan and you do CrossFit and you meet someone else who also does that, you're just instantly best friends or something. But I'm just saying, there's definitely things that you can bond over. And while some people might pin this as sort of a method, or maybe even as a con or something, I don't honestly think that it is or has to be. I mean, of course, you can act like you're interested in that person's, personal interests, and just approach them that way, just for the sake of selling them something. But of course, that's going to kind of, fall on your toes pretty quickly when they notice that you don't actually care about their interests, but you're just trying to basically have them, grab their attention and then sell to them. So in essence, I think it does make sense to start with, because if you are interested in certain things, then you will generally, of course, have an easier time connecting with people that are also interested in the same things. And you might be of different personalities, you might not be best friends, but being able to establish a common level on which you converse, and then, examining that conversation, seeing, as an example, if I would approach someone who likes metal music, you would think like, oh, you're going to be best friends, like, just, go. But then that person might have very different type of bands than I do, or they might have a very different perspective on the music than I do. And then we would actually be worse off. Then we would actually, then I would like that person less if I wouldn't know that about them. So that can go both ways, but it's a good, I would say, a baseline environment to establish whether you get along with that person or not, and you're able to establish protocol. And the way that I'm saying that it doesn't need to be friendship is because there is a level of personal connection that works for professional demeanor, conduct, for working together well. That is quite different from being friends, essentially. And sometimes I feel like it's even good if you're not best friends with your best work acquaintances and clients. because that can lead to other issues in that sense, because it's a conflict of interest to a certain extent, right? And yeah, so basically, I try to find a way to connect to that person, examine that connection, and then I decide, does this feel like it's meaningful or beneficial for me or them or both of us? Or is this more kind of, this is not leading anywhere? And I don't think, it's about someone being good or bad at what they do. It's more about the quality of the connection. Like either we connect or we don't. And everyone has their right to existence as they are. But it's about the strength of the connection, or the quality of the connection, not about the objective value of someone's qualities.
And talking about the quality of the connection, how do you make sure to build meaningful connections?
I think it is important to invest. As in, you cannot build that without doing anything yourself. I mean, I guess it's self-evident, that statement, but I mean, it's something you don't have to do once. You have to do it continually. You have to keep up with people. You have to make them feel relevant and, they exist in your life. And just kind of keep up with them. There's different ways of doing that. I mean, I guess I'm a person who keeps up more irregularly and context-based, but I do keep up with a lot of people just on a basis of, hey, I'm in town, let's meet. If they, for instance, if they're somewhere else, I will always let people know, since I'm traveling a lot, I sometimes get the opportunity of saying hey, I'm in your city, I'm close by, I want to meet up. Or I'm doing this thing where I thought of you because it's relevant to you. Let's catch up or something, right? So it's mostly about the long term and the continuous execution of I would say it's definitely more difficult to keep meaningful connections than to make them. But I mean, sometimes also meaningful connections just dissipate, and then that's fine as well.
Do you use social media to keep these connections?
As a means of communication, yes. Also, it sometimes ends up being a trigger both for other people and for myself to be reminded about someone, their birthday's coming up, or they just posted something, and I can go, oh yeah, I just remembered they're working on that thing. I'm just gonna reach out, so how's that going, kind of thing. So it's useful for that. But I do think that I think I've said this previously. That social media as a whole is kind of it's just the tool or the platform. At the end of the day, this self-evident crowd of which is generally referred to as influencers. So people who are not big on social media because they're famous through something else that they did, but they're a self-fulfilling prophecy, as in they're big on social media because they are big on social media. I feel they try to, in their own interest, which is fair, oversell the importance of it. So I would always kind of, rather urge people to go out and meet people in person or in a different context virtually, and then, see social media more as a means to maintain that, over establishing it as, the core tool and core means to establishing meaningful connections.
So you told that you go and meet people in person. So where do you usually meet new people?
Obviously through COVID, it mostly happened online. Before that, I would go to meetups. I would go to conventions and fairs and stuff. And that's I like to call it the synchronicity hack, as in if people go to an event, they might read emails throughout the day, and they get tons of emails from tons of different people, tons of messages, whatever. So they can always kind of put that off or do that asynchronously and have their focus all over the place while they're at their computers or something. But when they go to an event, then they're there. They mostly dedicate their time to being in that very spot at the very time. And that's when you can really get their full attention. So that's something I think you should make use of if you're interested in connecting with people. Rather than, I don't know, if it's of course within your means, rather than sending random messages to people on LinkedIn, let's say, you should rather find a circumstance, be it virtual or in person, where they are going to be in attendance, let's say at a 1 hour video call or something, where they're going to be focused on that thing only, and then try to connect with them there. Not only because it's a higher chance of success, but also because it's just, I feel like it's ultimately more respectful in general, because then you're shooting your shot, you're grabbing that person's full attention and seeing where it goes, over, acting like, for instance, that you're their best friend and sending them all these messages, or like, hey, I wasn't able to reach you earlier. Of course you weren't, because I don't know you and I didn't want to pick up the phone, type of thing, So I feel like that's not only the most promising, but also honest way to connect.
And how do you use your network, like both personally and professionally?
Of course, I use my network to get jobs.
Yeah, sure.
Anything that
definitely. That's exactly what the word networking is all about.
Yeah, for sure. But I do understand that sometimes you need to pay certain things forward. Like, for instance, I've helped out people, with, I don't know, referring them or something, and then they would repay it through referring me, and sometimes also people have referred me without ever me having done something for them. Or also I, refer others and haven't gotten anything back. But it's not about that, right? It's not about taking or keeping stock of who owes you what. It's more about, seeing that entire thing as, let's say, I know this sounds cosmic, but like, if you see that as a universe that you contribute to, and you might also get something back, and it doesn't depend on, who you pay a favor to and who you get a favor from back. But of course, you increase the likelihood of receiving something back if you just keep giving, and you don't give stingily in that sense. That said, I understand that sometimes you have to protect your domain. Some people build entire businesses out of protecting domains, but in general, I think it's about trying to be helpful and then hoping that others will try to repay the favor.
I have a few people, I know a few people who literally have a list who they helped to and who helped them. It looks a little weird, but yeah, I totally get it.
You always run into people who'll use you. I feel like the worst you can do to yourself is get upset about it, because it's always going to happen. You can never know up front. I always like to say that if you operate that way, as in like you just use people, you might get left with some benefits like money or track record or whatever, but you're definitely going to end up without friends. You're going to end up without people who like you and who are going to be there for you when you actually need someone. And that is not the game I'm playing. So
yeah, Bertrand, I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So the final question, what is your favorite food?
My favorite food? Oh, that's tough, because I like food. Actually, I know this seems like a very general thing, but there are actually people who don't like food. Like they drink these Soylent Greenish type of, like, oh, it's a meal in a drink, like, and I don't have to eat. That's great. I'm like, no, I don't want that. But short answer is pizza.
Welcome to the pizza team.
I gladly accept that invitation.
I wish that one day we'll definitely have some great pizza. So looking forward to it. And
yes, next time I'm in Warsaw, I'll definitely let you know. Then we're going to grab pizza.
And thank you so much for sharing your experience, Bertrand. It's such a pleasure.
Thanks for hearing me out.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friends. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.